Hey guys, this is our first video on the Congress of Vienna. Before we can get started on the Congress of Vienna, we have to talk about the events that led up to it, specifically the French Revolution and the reign of Napoleon. France was ruled by the absolute monarch, Louis XVI. He divides France into three estates, the first being the clergy, which is anyone who's involved in the church officials, church leaders. The second estate is the nobility. A noble is someone who owns land. Okay, so we have the first and second estates, which is the clergy and the nobility. They are completely exempt from taxes. It's always been like that for them in France, and that's how they want to keep it. The third estate is everyone else. This is doctors, lawyers, merchants, craft workers. Okay, it's all your common people of France. They have the sole burden of paying all the taxes in France. So the first and second estates have no taxes. The third estate has all the taxes. This is what's going to lead to several riots and eventually the French Revolution in France. Here's our king, Louis XVI of France. He is an absolute monarch, which means he has all the power. He has centralized his power in France. Unfortunately for him, this power would soon come to an end as the people begin to revolt against him. One of the major reasons why people are going to revolt against King Louis XVI is the way that he's spending the money. Okay, all the taxes that he gets from the third estate are put into his extremely lavish lifestyle, including the palaces of Versailles that he builds and all the costly wars that he's fighting overseas, such as helping the Americans in the American Revolution to overthrow the British. Okay, all of the taxes that Louis XVI takes from the people and spends on things such as wars and things such as his lavish lifestyle leads the nation into extreme debt. Okay, there is no more money to fight wars. There's no more money to live the lifestyle he's been living, and there's no money to help the people out of France. On top of all these struggles with economics and money, there's also a huge crop failure in France, which is going to lead the people into a revolt, specifically for the want of bread and for more money. Riots and demonstration against the absolute monarchy and against Louis XVI specifically begin to take place all throughout France. They are demanding that the third estate gains rights and that they start to tax all the people and not just the third estate. One of the major reasons that these people are going to start the rebellions and the riots against the king is the Enlightenment. Now, this is a time period where great thinkers such as John Locke, he displays several writings which say the people should overthrow a king or a tyrant who doesn't provide them with their natural rights, like the right to life, liberty, and property. Just across the Atlantic Ocean in America, there was a revolution against the British. This is happening at the same time, or just before the French Revolution. And the Americans won their independence from an absolute monarch, which was the King of England. And by seeing them doing this, they are inspired and feel like they also could overthrow their king and be successful in starting their own country. As soon as King Louis XVI realizes that his country is in turmoil, that the people are rioting and his monarchy could still come to an end, he tries to fix things. He calls the Estates General, which is a meeting of all three estates, the first, second, and third estate, and they're going to meet to try and work out problems to save the country. At this meeting, the third estate declares that they are going to make themselves a national assembly. What they're going to do is try and write a new constitution for France. Okay, and they're going to try and take over without any help from a king or any help from the first and second estate. They are going to totally rule on their own. Riots and looting continue to break out throughout Paris and the rest of France as the third estate gains power and as the National Assembly begins to form. Louis XVI calls in French troops who are supposed to defend the absolute monarchy, but rebellions and riots overcome these French troops. One of the major events of the revolution is the storming of the Bastille, which you can see here. This is a prison. It is a symbol of absolute monarchy and the power of Louis XVI. So the people of France storm through these gates and they take all the weapons and release prisoners from this jail. The absolute monarchy loses all their privileges. The first and second estates lose all their privileges, such as not having taxes and the exemptions that they got for certain things. The third estate gains power and takes over France. What you see here is the guillotine, and the guillotine is going to kill anyone who is opposed to the new French Revolution. This time period is referred to as the Reign of Terror, It is led by Robespierre, and during this time period, they will actually kill King Louis XVI and his wife Maria Antoinette. Eventually, Robespierre himself, the leader of this reign of terror, will be killed, and will start a directory in France, which is a new form of government led by more moderate people. Things at home don't go so well for France under the Directory. The government is failing and people are still angry and rioting. Outside France, all of the other absolute monarchs, such as Great Britain, such as Prussia and Russia, and they're going to declare war on France because if King Louis XVI could be killed, so could they. So they want to end what's going on in France before it spreads to their countries. The French army proves themselves successful as they win a whole bunch of battles against these countries that are trying to invade them. Napoleon rises to power very quickly as a leader in the military. Here you can see a map of Europe in 1799 before Napoleon takes over and leads the army throughout Europe. Napoleon will lead a campaign which drives the French Empire very far east and even into parts of North Africa. Here is a map which shows several countries throughout Europe. The blue here is Napoleon's empire. Okay, you can see how far it stretches all the way almost to Russia, which will actually be his downfall. Because as he invades Russia, the Russians back up and burn all the towns and villages, which eventually is going to lead Napoleon's army to freeze and starve to death. So he enters there with 600,000 soldiers and returns with about 40,000. Eventually, these countries are going to join together and fight the French back. Napoleon will be eventually defeated, and all of these countries in Europe, which have had their borders changed and taken over by France, will have to come to a meeting. This meeting is going to decide how to draw new boundaries and what countries should exist and how to maintain power in Europe so that something like this, where the French try and take over all of Europe, could never happen again. This meeting is going to be known as the Congress of Vienna.
The 1814 Congress of Vienna was when the victors of the Napoleonic Wars assembled in Vienna, Austria to plan the post-war world and rebuild the international order. It was meant to tie together the continental nations by a shared sense of moral values and to create a balance of power. The head of the Congress who would decide Europe's fate for the next 40 to 60 years was Prince Clemens von Metternich, the representative from Austria. Metternich believed that democracies were dangerous and unpredictable. He wanted to preserve the authority that was held by the monarchs. At that time period, it made sense to be against revolution and democracy because they only brought power-hungry dictators to power who looked towards expanding their nation's borders through invasion and war. The other representatives at the Congress were Hardenberg from Prussia, Talleyrand from France, Castlereagh from Britain, and Alexander, the Tsar of Russia. These statesmen had several major problems to fix, the first being Germany. Germany at that time consisted of several small feudal-like states and kingdoms that were too weak to adequately protect themselves. The issue was that when the Germanic peoples were weak and divided, it tempted its neighbors, such as France, to expand. However, at the same time, Germany was rapidly increasing in power, and it also took up a massive chunk of continental Europe, so a unified Germany would be too great a threat to its neighbors. The solution was to consolidate, not unify Germany. The over 300 German states were combined into 30, which were then titled as the German Confederation. This way, it was too strong to be attacked, yet at the same time too weak to attack others. Another issue was France. Most of the congressmen wanted France severely punished, and you can't really blame them since their countries had just been ravaged and torn apart by Napoleon's armies. Metternich, however, claimed that Europe would be far safer if France was reprimanded yet satisfied instead of angry and resentful. We can see how clearly Metternich's ideas are if we compare it to the 1919 Treaty of Versailles that left Germany weak, angry, economically destitute, and vulnerable to dictators like Hitler. As a result, France's conquered territory was returned and her pre-war borders were restored. Later, in 1818, France was also admitted to the Congress system. Finally, in order to more unify the great powers under Metternich's web of moral restraint, the two alliances were created. The first was the Quadruple Alliance between Great Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia. Its main purpose was to prevent any trouble started by France. The other alliance was the Holy Alliance of Austria, Prussia, and Russia. It was initially proposed by Alexander to preserve the domestic status quo of European nations. Basically, it was to combat revolution and support the monarchies in power.